played a major part in developing Perth, Western Australia's capital city. Even today, it's recognised as the world's most isolated city, in that it's thousands of kilometres from a comparable city, even in its own country. After the disastrous 5-year drought during the 1890s, engineers dreamed of a bold plan to put more water into the Murray by redirecting the east-flowing Snowy River through a tunnel through the Great Dividing Range. This would solve a shortage of irrigation water for Mildura and the fast-growing riverland area in South Australia. After the end of the Second World War, the Australian government decided the project could wait no longer. The Snowy Mountain scheme was to not only redirect the Snowy River westwards into the Murray and Murrumbidgee rivers for irrigation, but also to harvest the melting snows of the Great Dividing Range. Store the water in a series of dams linked by a network of tunnels, and harness the energy of that falling water to generate electricity to the energy-starved emerging cities of Sydney and Melbourne. The project needed an enormous workforce, which Australia didn't have in the 19th century and still didn't have by the middle of the 20th century, because its population growth had been stunted by the loss of hundreds of thousands of young men in 2 world wars. So Australia invited people from all over the world to work on the scheme. Europe, torn apart by war, provided plenty of refugees and migrants looking for a new start. 100,000 workers and their families from 34 different nations worked side by side on a grand project that would take more than 20 years to complete. Mighty dams were constructed, and many tunnels were drilled through solid rock, and enormous pipes channeled water to huge underground power stations. By world standards, the completion of the Snowy Mountain scheme was an amazing feat of engineering. It achieved its goals, it provided water for irrigation in 3 states, and its humming generators fed power to the fast-growing cities of Sydney and Melbourne. But the Snowy Mountain scheme's greatest triumph was proving people all from different countries and cultures can peacefully work together in Australia in a climate of acceptance and tolerance.
In the evenings and weekends, men of many nationalities relax in comradeship in the comfortable lounges which the authority provides for its isolated community.
The Snowy Mountains scheme was a successful social experiment which has few comparisons anywhere. It was Australia's first taste of multiculturalism, which was to continue. Migrant children and parents, taught English while working on the scheme, decided to stay in Australia when their work contracts ran out, adding new cultural ingredients wherever they went. Even in Hobart, in one of Australia's oldest streets, Salamanca Place, Italians and Greeks and others made it an avenue of restaurants, offering Australians at the time, raised on bland British diets, new and exciting standards in cuisine. Probably because of its space and climate, even city-dwelling Australians love the outdoors. You'll find Aussies everywhere, enjoying the environment in which they live. And because of a horse-riding heritage, you'll find race meetings all over Australia, even in remote places, which can't grow a blade of grass on the track, like the pearl town of Broome. Coupled with this is a love of gambling in all its forms. The most Australian of all is a game called 2-up, where 2 coins are tossed and you bet on the possibility of 2 heads or 2 tails turning up. And it's at games like this you'll find when Australians are enjoying themselves, they are unashamedly a noisy lot. But sadder events also shaped the Australian character. Except for the bombing of Darwin, war never came to the shores of this country, but tens of thousands of Australian men and women went to war in other parts of the world. The outbreak of World War I marked a defining moment for the nation, because after Federation in 1901, Australia, although still part of the British Empire, became independent and for the first time went to war as such. The Australian and New Zealand Armoured Corps, or ANZAC for short, saw the sacrifice of more soldiers per head of population than any other nations in the British Empire. The physical result was slowing Australia's population growth for the 20th century, but there was a deeper spiritual legacy. For with hardly a family untouched by the loss of a loved one, respect for the memory of the Anzacs is deeply etched into the soul of the nation. The Australian government makes sure the final resting place of every man and woman who died serving his or her country is marked, no matter where in the world they fell, and every grave is carefully looked after. The heat of battle in which Anzacs fought bravely reinforced Australian attitudes to life. Like never ever letting down your mates or your friends is something definitely Australian. And this is linked to a desire for and a commitment to individual freedom, which is fiercely defended. Aussies are law-abiding, but only if they think the laws are fair. In Australia, there's a widespread disrespect for those in authority. Even the design of the Federal Parliament building in the nation's capital, Canberra, reflects that. The Parliament is built under a man-made hill, a reminder that the lowliest citizens in the land stand above the politicians they elected when they visit their capital city. Many migrants, like Italian-born Stefano De Piri, found when he was establishing himself in this country, Aussies accepted him at face value and gave him what they call a fair go.
It's not as stratified as the society that I left behind, where everybody had a position on the social scale according to how much money they had. Sure, that goes on anywhere, but Australians seem to break down those differences a bit, or certainly at best they ridicule them anyway.
Stefano's restaurant in the Mildura Hotel, which remember was built by the Chaffey brothers beside the Murray River, has become one of the best in Australia.
Here anybody is a king. They're king in their own life, they're kings in their own sector. If they live in a poorer suburb, well, they can emerge there, and if they are in a richer suburb, they're the kings over there.
Another migrant, Marta Kapinski, came from Poland. She has a strong belief in the power of the Egyptian pyramids. So in the heart of the snowy mountain country, the Kapinskis offer accommodation in pyramid-shaped rooms. Even their dog lives in a pyramid. Australia, she says, gave her the freedom to follow an eccentric dream.
I have noticed more, I know more and more that this is the country and this is the place, away from the crowds, out in the open. It's just amazing, the friendships you get being in a country. It's absolutely wholesome.
Aussies have even developed their own vocabulary. For example, fair dinkum is a well-known Australian expression meaning genuine. But the word dinkum comes from Cantonese miners who worked the Ballarat diggings, and roughly translated means real gold. And not far away from the gold rush town of Sovereign Hill lives a real fair dinkum Aussie bloke, James Egan. James is a renowned artist, an unusual character who paints scenes from all around Australia, a vast land with so many contrasts.
You could spend 5 lifetimes travelling this country and still not find it. There's still another road to go down. There's still another exciting place. We've got it all here, the snowfields, the great deserts, it's all here.